So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon in this beautiful transportation station. I'm happy to be here as Governor Baker makes two important announcements regarding passenger rail service and investments in Western Massachusetts in advance of the new service from Springfield to New Haven, Connecticut that will be beginning later this week. I would first like to thank Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito for their leadership, which has enabled us to reach the point we are at today. With their support and guidance, MassDOT is continuing to work to strengthen our transportation system across Massachusetts, including our rail networks and including every corner of the state. In the Baker-Polito administration, we try hard to ensure that planning activities are linked promptly to implementation actions. As many of you know, at the beginning of the year, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation released a draft of a statewide rail plan. That rail plan called for a number of priority actions, including a priority action concerning a pilot rail service along the Knowledge Corridor to connect down to Union Station, and a priority study of east-west passenger rail. We're here today to talk about not only the release of the final version of that rail plan, but how we are going to be following up on both of those commitments made in the rail plan. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Governor Charlie Baker.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you for your work on this and on so many issues. And I also want to say thank you very much to Congressman Neal, who's behind me, along with Mayor Sarno, and a host of other male elected officials, including me in that category. Secretary Pollack and the rest of us, I would call a tie. Let me just start, first of all, by saying that we have several announcements to make today, and they are announcements that are the result of a lot of hard work by a lot of people. Congressman Neal, Senator Lesser, the mayor, and the representatives and the delegation have all been incredibly important in the dialogue and discussion we've had on all of this stuff. And we'll continue to work with our federal partners and our state legislative delegations and others to increase our capacity and strengthen our service across the Commonwealth as we move forward. But today we want to talk about, first of all, announcing a request for proposals for a consultant team to study the east-west passenger rail service, which is something that has been talked about quite a bit. This is a multi-million-dollar study. It will involve all aspects of this particular initiative. It will build on work that's been done at the federal level and at the state level, and will probably take roughly 12 to 18 months to put all of the elements of it through the review process that's required here, but it will give us the chance to take a comprehensive look at all the options that are possible and to make what I would describe as the best decision going forward for the Commonwealth and for the region. We're also pleased to announce that we've reached an agreement with Connecticut, which will expand the Amtrak passenger rail service in the Pioneer Valley on a pilot basis. Starting next year, we have a bunch of work we need to do that relates to some of the basic infrastructure. In the meantime, to prepare the tracks and the signals for that. I think it's a pretty good thing too. But that's going to leverage the Mass DOT-owned Knowledge Corridor, which is currently used by Amtrak's Vermonter service, and the recent renovations that have been made here at Union Station. And then finally, we are thrilled to be participating with so many others in the new Connecticut Rail Hartford Line passenger service, which this line will eventually connect to the Knowledge Corridor line, which will make it possible for people to go from Greenfield to New York and back in one day. And that particular Connecticut Rail service, the original part of this, starts this weekend. I believe this is the beginning of a whole series of initiatives that will be incredibly important to this region and to the Pioneer Valley generally. And we are very thrilled to have been able to work so collaboratively with our colleagues, Congressman Neal, Congressman McGovern, and many of the folks in the state legislative delegation to move these initiatives forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Secretary Pollack.
So as the governor said, we're immediately following up on today's release of the final state rail plan in two ways. First, Tomorrow, we will publish a request for proposals for an east-west passenger rail study. That study will look at the potential of passenger rail, not just from Springfield but to Boston, but we'll also be looking at potential origins in Pittsfield and the Berkshires, and we'll also be looking at Palmer as a potential station stop. And one of the reasons for making sure that we're looking at all those options is we've had wonderful advocacy by all of the delegations in this part of the state, and they made it clear that they want all of that on the table. All of that will be on the table. It will be an 18-month study. One of the strengths of Springfield and this wonderful metropolitan area is that it is connected to really two metro areas, the Boston metro area to its east, and then Connecticut and into the New York City area to the south. Some people have argued that we need to make a choice between better connections to our south and better connections to our east. The actions we're taking today acknowledge that both are important, although different. The East-West Rail Study is a critical step forward. As we've discussed at length with Senator Lesser, we don't need to wait for the legislature to order us to do a study when we know that it's a good idea, and this is a good idea, so we're going to move ahead with that study. But the actual service to Boston will take a while to become a reality because we don't even own the tracks from here to east to Worcester. They're owned by CSX, which will also be part of that study. What there is the potential to do is increase the amount of service north-south right away while we continue to study the east-west connection. And so the second announcement we're making today, consistent with the recommendations in the rail plan, is that the Massachusetts Department of Transportation has a signed term sheet with the Connecticut Department of Transportation to begin pilot service from Greenfield through Holyoke and Northampton down the Knowledge Corridor here to Springfield Union Station, on to Hartford, New Haven, and on to New York. The service would start about this time next year, run for 2.5 years. It would be a single-seat service. You would be able to get on a train in Greenfield, stay on the same train all the way down to New Haven, and then switch to Metro North to get to New York City. While we have not finalized the schedule, Amtrak will operate this service for us, so we're still finalizing the schedule. But it is designed to ensure that for those who really love train travel, you will be able to take an early morning train from Greenfield to New York and return the same day. As some folks here know, we had hoped we might even be able to start the pilot this year. It turns out that we've got some capital investments that need to be made in advance of service. So this construction season is part of the 5-year capital plan that was announced about a month ago by the Baker-Polito administration. What you'll see is the completion of a new Platform C here in Springfield Union Station, the completion of a new fully accessible platform in Northampton, and the completion of track work both by MassDOT and by Pan Am. All of that work needs to be done before we can start the pilot service. All of that work is funded in the capital plan and will in fact be done in the next year so we can begin the pilot service in a year. As I mentioned, and I'll mention again later, there have been a lot of very articulate advocates who have pressed the governor, myself, MassDOT, to push ahead on both these initiatives, both the East-West Passenger Rail Study and the pilot North-South service. But perhaps no one has been advocating for these kinds of investments to leverage the investment that's already been made in this beautiful station we're standing in better than Congressman Richard Neal, who has been instrumental in helping rehabilitate and restore this beautiful station so that we have it here to support these new services that we're going to be providing and studying. Congressman Neal.
Thanks very much, Madam Secretary, for those nice remarks of introduction. And I want to thank Governor Baker, whether it was the platform that we asked for additional funding on, whether it was in the closing days of the development of the station with the administration, whether it was on East-West. And just on East-West, I want to say something, if I might. Charlie Baker and I began a series of private conversations over the course of the last year. And Jay Ash was very instrumental, as was Stephanie Pollack, in bringing us to this moment. And I think that trying to sometimes explain to the public in terms of patience as to how these things are accomplished can be a bit of a challenge. But recall in 2006, John Olver helped out when we put together an earmark that also analyzed the potential for East-West. And I do want to acknowledge Tim Brennan here, who's here today. I don't think we've had a better advocate. And Linda Dunleavy, in a lot of ways, part of this was her idea and thought, and I want to congratulate her, even though she's, I don't believe, with us today. And certainly to the local legislators and city council members that are here as well. And nobody's been a better friend in this project than Dominic Sarno. I mean, he has just been outstanding day in and day out in his advocacy. So let me give you some numbers. Sometimes immediate expenditure is derided. And that was the case with stimulus money. So we put together an $850 billion stimulus package. You know why? Because conventional economics, the way Congress once used to function, conventional economics said that in an economic downturn in which we were losing 800,000 jobs a month, that you do two things. You increase public spending and you cut taxes. We did both. We did both. And the result is it took a long time on North-South, which we have heralded, and a witness to a big achievement that's coming on Friday, thanks in measure to Governor Baker, Governor Malloy, and Governor Patrick. That money was also used for middle-mile investment in the hill towns for broadband. And now people are beginning to see the result of what we did years ago. And that's part, I think, of the rhythm of public expenditure, and understanding that is really important. So Connecticut Rail says that once the north-south leg is up and running, 1,800 to 2,000 more people a day will pass through Union Station. This station is now 71% rented, and Mayor Sarno says we're going to get the rest of it done in short order. I call that to your attention because, again, there sometimes is a lapse between the groundbreaking and the ribbon cutting in terms of symbolism. People tend to understand those two bookends of public expenditure, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and that's what we're witnessing today. But also a reminder, and I think the public needs to be reminded about public expenditure from time to time. One of the parts of it that has appealed most to me is the public generally is opposed to public expenditure in general, but boy, they're very much for it in the specific. And therein lies the differentiation. But remember something else today. The Vermonter has really worked. North of Springfield. I was on that train a few years ago through Hatfield when that train hit 70 miles an hour because the track had been improved. Now, there are going to be some impediments we understand, including CSX, which the governor and I have spoken of time and again in the Worcester Rail Yard. But that doesn't mean that we won't be able to enhance the opportunities for improved rail between Worcester, Springfield, and Pittsfield. And I think that's what we should be trying to emphasize. So Friday is going to be another step in the right direction. And when I consider that platform upstairs, when I call Charlie Baker, I'm telling you, and Stephanie Pollack, they might have moaned privately, but they got on it. And so we're witnessing all of it. In this station today, when it's done, it's about $107 million that was wisely spent on behalf of public taxpayers. Thank you all very much.
There are a lot of people who need to be thanked, but because he couldn't be here today, I do want to make sure to thank Congressman Jim McGovern, because in addition to Congressman Neal, and especially when it comes to the Knowledge Corridor and the moving the Vermonter to that corridor that serves Greenfield and Northampton and Holyoke, and this pilot service to further put more trains on those tracks, more passengers on those trains to come down to Springfield and continue to Hartford and New Haven and New York. Congressman McGovern has also been a huge advocate for people of his district and more broadly the people of Western Massachusetts. So he's terribly sorry he couldn't be here today, but we should all give a round of applause to Congressman McGovern as well. And Congressman Neal also mentioned two people that I was planning to mention, Tim Brennan from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and Linda Dunleavy from the Franklin County Council of Governments. They have been important advocates for both the study, the East-West study, and the North-South service. They're also going to be important partners in both of those efforts. We're particularly delighted that both Tim and Linda are going to help us with marketing the new service. One of the advantages of actually starting the service a year from now, while we do the construction, is we're going to have time to do great marketing and make sure we get great ridership. The prediction is we can get 24,000 riders a year on the pilot service, which again we hope to run for 2.5 or 3 years. But none of us would mind if we got more, and I know there'll be great partners in helping us look at the data and work on the study. So thanks again to both Tim and Linda. And another critical partner on a lot of things we do in transportation has been Mayor Sarno. Whether it has been the wonderful win-win work that's being done to construct the new MBTA red and orange line cars in a beautiful new manufacturing facility here in the city of Springfield, whether it has been the city's embrace of Complete Streets, which has recently enabled us to give them a new Complete Streets grant. Really, any issue that we're working on in transportation, the mayor has been a great partner, a great advocate for his city, and a great collaborator. So I give you Mayor Sarno.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And when she said, I take the morning train, how many of you echoed back to the Sheena Easton song, I take the morning train? There's a few older ones that are here. And to Governor Baker, who has been a great friend and partner to the city of Springfield and Western Massachusetts and to the whole Commonwealth, we appreciate your continued efforts to connect north-south rail, the Knowledge Corridor, which we have up and going, and now to feasibly look at what is sustainable. All modes of transportation, rail, and you name it, east-west, that makes sense to connect us from Boston to Springfield to the Berkshires to New York. We deeply appreciate that, and working with myself, the state legislature, and Congressman Neal. I also want to thank the congressman. You know, they speak about Babe Ruth, and they talk about Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built. Well, Union Station is the house that Richie Neal built. And Richie, we want to thank you for your steadfastness on this issue. And I want to thank the legislature, and I know this has been led by Senator Eric Lesser for putting this together. But this is a partnership that has really helped tremendously, working with the Baker administration. Secretary Pollack has been fantastic to work with. Federal level down with Congressman Neal, and of course on my city council as we move forward. When you look at all the development that is occurring, intermodal transportation is key, especially to the millennials, who many don't even own a car. So this Friday, again, as the congressman alluded to, and through the help of Governor Baker and Governor Malloy, 12 more trains back and forth coming up here, the Knowledge Corridor, which is key. Then you move forward and see what is feasible and sustainable on the east-west corridor. The connection will bring not only economic development here to the city of Springfield, but bring vibrancy to the city of Springfield. So I just really want to commend everybody that has been involved in this. They said in Springfield that Union Station would never happen. It has happened. They said you'll never get a world-renowned company such as MGM in Springfield. It has happened. They said you'll never get the largest railway manufacturing company in the world, CRRC, in Springfield. It's happened. We have a can-do attitude, working with Congressman Neal, Governor Baker, our local delegation, my city council, to get things done in Springfield. We are open for business, and the red carpet has been rolled out. So we ask everybody to get on, all aboard. Thank you so much.
So a number of folks have mentioned various members of the delegation, and I have to say that it is a pleasure working with both the members of the Senate and the members of the House of Representatives from this part of the state. They do a wonderful job of advocating. They don't let us forget any commitments or promises, but that's okay. They're doing their job to make sure that we do ours. So I don't want to close without acknowledging first the great senators, Senator Eric Lesser, Senator Hines, and Senator Welch. And then we have Representative Vaga, Representative Ash, Representative William, Representative Tasato. And I know Ann Goby would have loved to have been here and would have helped us with the gender ratio a little bit, but she could not make it today, but she's also been a ceaseless advocate for this. And so it has been our pleasure to work together at the local, state, and federal level to get to where we are today, and that this is really only an important milestone. It's the beginning of the next phase of work, the opening of this station, the moving of the Pioneer Valley Transit Administration and the Peter Pan buses here, starting this weekend, the additional Connecticut buses. But part of that story has to be the pilot north-south rail from Greenfield down the Knowledge Corridor to Connecticut and on to New York, and the beginning of the real roll-up-our-sleeves hard work of studying the feasibility and the potential economic and ridership benefit of East-West Rail. So we look forward to that next stage and to continuing the local, state, and federal partnership that has worked so well to bring us to this day. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Madam.